That leads us to the next quarterback on our list for today, because one possibility for Aaron Rodgers continues to be the Raiders. And as Chris Sims said yesterday, Aaron Rodgers, Josh McDaniels, get your popcorn ready if those two personalities cross paths, because there's going to be some things about Josh McDaniels that Aaron Rodgers will not like. And there's been a lot of tiptoeing on eggshells around Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay the past few years. Peter, you know that a guy who sprouted from the Belichick tree isn't tiptoeing on anything around anyone.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen to Aaron Rodgers. None of us do. But I just know this, Mike. And the reason why, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, whatever, in my column, that I quoted Schefter saying whatever the exact words were, the significant likelihood that he could be traded, or whatever the words were. But they basically introduced as a real possibility the chance that he could be traded. And I hadn't really been thinking of that beforehand, maybe not rightfully so, but whatever. When you start to think about it, the first thing I think of after covering the league for a long time is that a story like that does not get out if Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur are drawing a line in the sand and say, Aaron Rodgers will be traded over our dead bodies. There is no chance that Aaron Rodgers is going to be traded. It's obvious that that's not how they feel. And Mike, I think we need to have a little history lesson this morning on February 3rd, starting off the second hour of our show. And that history lesson is, it is absolutely unbelievable how history is repeating itself in Green Bay. If Aaron Rodgers goes to a new team or retires, just understand that 15 years ago, this month, Ted Thompson and fairly young coach in Green Bay, Mike McCarthy, agreed we want a decision from Brett Favre early this offseason about whether he's going to be coming back. And if he is coming back, we want him involved in our offseason program more than he has been in the past. What's going on right now? Tell me, what is going on right now? If Aaron Rodgers called Matt LaFleur right now or met with him, before he went on his ayahuasca or however the hell you pronounce that stuff down in Peru, if he met with him and, I think Matt LaFleur would say, listen, we need you to be more involved. We just do. We saw what happened this year. Young receivers took a while to get on the same page, blah, 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 and all that. We need you to be more involved. What's Aaron Rodgers going to say? I don't know. He might say, okay, I'll come to the second mini. I have no idea. I don't know what he would say. But the fact is, he hasn't been doing that in recent years. Favre didn't do that in his last few years. My point is very simple. That 15 years ago, this month started the wheels on the pavement that kept going around and round, faster and faster, that resulted on March 8th, 5 weeks from now, 15 years ago, for Brett Favre to announce his retirement. And then, he realizes about 6 weeks later, oh my God, I made a terrible mistake. I want to play. So I don't know what'll happen. And I'm not saying that Brett Favre or that Aaron Rodgers is Brett Favre at all. They're absolutely different people. However, it certainly is, as Yogi Berra once said, deja vu all over again.
And I think back to what happened in February of 2008, and my theory has always been the Packers were done with Brett Favre. They were done with the annual will I or won't I soliloquy from Brett Favre. Am I coming back? Am I not coming back? They had a first-round quarterback that they had drafted in the 20s who had sat on the bench for 3 seasons, and they were ready to see what Aaron Rodgers could do. So I believe they specifically went to Favre and posed that question in February. We need to know right now if you're playing this year, because they knew in February Favre's attitude was, I don't want to play. And they feared that as February became March, became April, became May, became June, became July, he would change his mind and want to play after the offseason program, after that change in the grass where the smell in the air, it's football season. Then he's ready to go. They wanted him to commit, and they wanted to barricade the door with furniture, and I think they drafted 7 quarterbacks that year on top of having Aaron Rodgers to keep Brett Favre out. He still came back, and they had to deal with him, and that's when they traded him to the Jets. I think what the Packers are doing now is, and you have to play Aaron Rodgers differently. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to fall for what Brett Favre fell for. So you kind of have to let Aaron Rodgers come to the conclusion on his own that it's time for me to move on to another team. And the danger in trying to engineer this toward Rodgers choosing to leave, he has all the power here. We've talked about how much power Derek Carr has, given his contract with the Raiders. Aaron Rodgers has all the power, because if he just says to the Packers, you know what, I want to play for you again, he gets $60 million fully guaranteed this year, and they can do some cap things to deal with it, but it's still $60 million coming out of the coffers of Green Bay Packers Incorporated that is going to Aaron Rodgers this year if they don't trade him. So they set up that contract last year to create a minimum 2-year commitment to Aaron Rodgers. And now he's the one that has to make the commitment to the team. And I think that's part of this. They don't want him to think they don't want him there, because that could cause him to say, fine, I'm just staying. You have to deal with me for 1 more year, and you got to pay me $60 million. So I think there's levels of psychology going on with Aaron Rodgers that weren't applicable to Brett Favre for a variety of reasons. And I think that's this maze that the Packers are currently trying to find their way through with Aaron Rodgers.
I think one of the interesting things you point out, Mike, is just the simple fact that when you think about it, okay, so in Aaron Rodgers' 4th year, 2008, they were still very much thinking that they weren't positive about him. And what's so interesting about that is Jordan Love enters his 4th year as an NFL player in 2023, and the Packers don't know about him either. And not that there's anything wrong with that. Football sometimes is a mystery wrapped in a riddle. It just is. But the coincidence of this is so remarkable. But I do get the impression that even though what they got for Favre was relatively nothing compared to what he ended up being worth in his 2 years in Minnesota. In his 1 year with the Jets and then 2 years in Minnesota, which obviously they got nothing for. But I just think this is a great example of history repeating itself.
Oh, and it will be fun to watch it all play out. And the first step is Rodgers deciding, does he want to play at all? That's step 1. And then step 2 is, does he want to play for the Packers? And step 3 is, if not for the Packers, who's he going to play for? Now, before he goes off on his ayahuasca bender, as you mentioned earlier, he's participating in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. A little sound yesterday when he was asked if there's any news he wants to share regarding his potential destination. He has allowed us, Peter King, to take one team off the board. Let's have a listen to Aaron Rodgers from Thursday.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Cole.
Got any news you want to share with us?
Not going to San Fran.
There it is, not going to San Fran. And that's significant because, Peter, if you remember, the day of the draft, 2021, and the guy who pulled the pin on the grenade was my good friend Paul Allen. He started talking about how the 49ers the night before had made a run at trading for Aaron Rodgers. They had moved up to the number 3 overall pick, and they had decided, in lieu of using that pick, they were going to call the Packers and try to get Aaron Rodgers. And there was a belief that the Packers had told Rodgers, if you want to be traded, we'll trade you, and that they backed out on that. But it was the 49ers, interest from the 49ers, that started that whole mess back in 2021. Well, this time around, forget about the 49ers. They have enough issues of their own, and it will not be finally rectifying their failure to draft Aaron Rodgers with the first overall pick in 2005 when future Packers coach Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco. And yes, 18 years later, Aaron Rodgers still holds a grudge about that.
I mean, okay. I'll just say this. If Aaron Rodgers had the chance to go to San Francisco and didn't go, and instead opted for, I don't even know, the Jets, Washington, whatever, just, is that a little bit, I don't know, spiteful? What's the right word for that? Not smart?
Petty.
I mean,
petty.
You tell me. Yeah, petty. You tell me what team, and first of all, other than Jed York, who in 2005 was as far from the seat of power in the 49ers, with the 49ers organization, as is humanly possible, okay? But there's nobody there in San Francisco now who was there in 2005. I mean, like, where's Mike Nolan? Mike McCarthy, we can talk about that all day. The fact is, are you telling me right now that you would pass on a chance for the next 2 years to play with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, and you'd pass on the chance to play with George Kittle? You'd pass on the chance to play with the best defense in football in 2022. That you know that they're going to hand you the keys to that Ferrari for the next 2 years, let's say, if you committed to it, and you wouldn't do it, I am without speech.
They're telling me to break, and it's funny because sometimes what Courtney says is break next, break whenever you want to break. When she starts saying break, then I know I have to break. But I'm sorry, Courtney, I have to say this. Peter, my theory on Aaron Rodgers is he doesn't want to go to a place where the deck is stacked for him to win a Super Bowl, because if he fails, then the narrative shifts ever so slightly from it was the Packers' fault they never got back to a Super Bowl to maybe it was Aaron's fault. If they fail, if he goes to San Francisco and he throws a big interception in a big spot, maybe it was Aaron's fault that they never went back to a Super Bowl. And I think he operates on an intellectual plane where he would be at least considering how that could play. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.